I'm Elizabeth, a literary princess, and today I have my top 10 reads of 2023 for you. So let's first go over what criteria a book has to meet to make it on this list. It needs to be a book that I read for the first time in 2023, so no rereads. I'm only putting one per author on the list unless it is a series that I have read more than one book of in the year, and then they count as a single book. So we will start with number 10 and then we will move our way up. Let's jump in. Sitting at number 10 is Deathless by Catherine M. Valente. This is a fairy tale retelling of the Russian story, The Death of Cujo the Deathless, or Maria Morevna. Am I pronouncing that right? Probably not. I think I might have though. This reimagines the fairy tale during the Russian Revolution, and I really love this. It took me like 60 something days to read. It's not that long. That shouldn't have. But I started it in September, took a month off for October because it was Victober, and then I didn't finish it until toward the end of November. So I was not actively reading it for all of those 60 something days. Valente's writing is simply gorgeous. I love what she has done with the fairy tale. I wish that I knew more about Russian folklore and Russian history because I think that would have added a lot to my experience with the book, and it might have been higher up on this list if I were more familiar with those. However, this is such a great read, definitely worth it, highly recommend. Sitting at number 9 is a 2023 new release and a debut novel. This is The Secrets of Hartwood Hall by YouTube's own Katie Lumsden from Books and Things. This is historical fiction set in the Victorian era following a governess who goes to work at Hartwood Hall taking care of a young boy, and things are a little bit sketchy. I had such a wonderful time with this book. It is a love letter to Victorian Gothic fiction, particularly the Brontes. There are aspects of Jane Eyre, there are aspects of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and it was just such a good time. And there is a part of the ending that I know some people really don't like, but I actually really liked it. I'm not going to say more than that because it would be completely spoilers. However, I highly recommend this. I can't believe it's a debut novel, and I am so excited for Katie's new book that is coming out in 2024. I have already pre-ordered it, and I cannot wait because this was just so good. Sitting at number 8 is yet another 2023 release. This is Thief, Liar, Lady by D.L. Soria. This is another fairy tale retelling, this time of Cinderella. And the concept is that the Cinderella character is not who she has said she is. She has ulterior motives for infiltrating the castle and becoming engaged to the prince. I had such a good time with this. I actually read this as an ARC before it came out, and then I asked for it for my birthday in physical copy because I loved it so much. The main character, whose name I'm like not... Oh, and it's not gonna say because it's first person narration. Really? Really? I can't find her name. However, I loved her. She is morally gray, and I just find that so fun, especially in a retelling of Cinderella, where, you know, the original character is just like the epitome of kindness and goodness. So giving her more of an edge is just so much fun, and she has so much agency. And I need to reread it. I feel like I'm already forgetting things. Like, obviously, I can't remember her name. What the... Look, it's been a year, okay? But I do really want to reread this. Probably not in 2024, but you never know. Maybe in 2025, and then I'll do a Fairy Tale Friday on it because I did not do a Fairy Tale Friday on this. So, yeah. Anyway, so good. Had such a good time. Coming in at number 7 is by probably my favorite contemporary author. This is Cujo by Stephen King. I have had this since I was like in middle school. Maybe it was high school, like early high school. But I never thought I would read it because, you know, it's about a dog that gets rabies, and we all know what happens when a dog gets rabies. And I'm very sensitive to animal death. So it has been languishing on my shelves. However, AJ Dunn over at AJ Dunn Reads and Writes just spoke so highly of this book that I was like, okay, I need to read it. So I read this. I think I did it in July. So the height of summer, which is when this takes place. And it was the perfect time. I just love King's work so much. I love his writing. I love the way he gets into characters' heads. The way he gets into a dog's head feels so real. And is this book heartbreaking in several ways? Yes, it is. But it is also edge of your seat tense. And yes, all the characters are horrible people other than the dog. And like the one little kid that's in it. But that's kind of par for the course with Stephen King. But yeah, so good. So good. I am so glad that I finally read it. Sitting at number 5 is by my favorite classic author. And this is The Doctor's Family by Margaret Oliphant. I read, I believe, 8 books by Oliphant this year. Some of those are short stories, but I'm like counting them as books. The Doctor's Family is the 3rd work in her Chronicles of Carlingford. And I have read this series horribly out of order. However, I loved this book so much. And I just read it in December, but it was so good. It's quite short, especially compared to her later Carlingford novels like Miss Marchbanks or The Perpetual Curate is the one I have up next. I saw a copy in the library and it was like that. So this is actually quite slim in comparison, but it just really gets this dynamic of this family in a way that is quite funny, but also like quite sad. It follows Dr. Edward Ryder, who's recently set up his practice in Carlingford when his alcoholic brother just kind of lands on his doorstep. And Edward is so done with his brother. He just doesn't like him, but like he's not going to kick him out. And then his brother's wife, children, and sister-in-law that he didn't even know existed all show up on his doorstep. So this is the story of Edward kind of navigating his relationship with them and falling in love with his sister-in-law, Nettie, who is frigging amazing. Like, one of my new favorite Victorian characters. Amazing. She just takes charge of the whole situation because Edward's brother is useless, Nettie's sister is useless, the children are running wild, and so she steps in and is like, okay, here's what we're doing. I enjoyed this so much. It's lovely. The Chronicles of Carlingford are just fantastic. Oliphant is really one of my favorite writers. So of course she had to represent on here. There were multiple books by her, as I said. However, I think The Doctor's Family really was my favorite of the ones I've read this year. Whether it'll be the favorite of all of hers remains to be seen. I'm kind of interested. I'm going to be rereading Miss Marchbanks and probably Phoebe Jr. and you know what, maybe even Hester, which are the ones that I think could give this the run for its money. So we'll see. Sitting at number 5 is the only nonfiction on this list. This is The Professor is In by Karen Kelsky, and the subtitle is The Essential Guide to Turning Your PhD into a Job. So if you're new here, I am in my 5th year of my literature PhD, so I am getting to the point where I need to start thinking about the job market and finding a job and what I'm gonna do after this. So I found this so helpful. I wish I'd been given this in my first year of the PhD, to be honest, or even like before I started it. There is so much useful advice in here. Sometimes Kelsey's a little harsh, but I understand why. There's a grant writing template in here that I found really helpful when I was writing my fellowship application recently. And there's just so many good tips about how to conduct yourself in interviews, kind of when you need to be publishing, what you need to be publishing, what to be doing at conferences, tips for how to format your CV. It's just such a helpful book. So of course it had to be on this list. Number 4 is one that I listened to on audiobook. This is Lost in the Moment and Found by Shannon McGuire. It is, I don't even know which number in the Wayward Children series anymore. It's the most recent release and one of my favorites of the series. Like probably we go in an absent dream, across the green grass plains, try saying that 5 times fast, and then Lost in the Moment and Found is my favorites order for this series. I had such a good time. Listening to it on audiobook was such a fun experience. I've only listened to one other from the series on audiobook. Usually I get them as arcs, but look, the trauma that this character goes through. Antoinette, I'm gonna look that up. Antoinette, I was right. I'm not forgetting everything, thank goodness. I mean, the trauma she goes through, both before she enters her portal world and then once she realizes exactly what's going on in the portal world, is just heartbreaking. Oh my word. This one really emphasizes the price of going through the doors and entering the portal worlds, which has definitely been obviously looked at in a lot of the books, in most of them, all of them. That's kind of the whole point of the series, but this one just really, like, hit me. So good. I cannot wait for the next book, which I know the next one is in the present timeline. So the odd-numbered books take place after the children have gone to their portal worlds, and then the even-numbered books focus in on them originally going to their portal worlds. So that was one of these, and those are always the ones that I like best, is when they're actually going to the portal worlds. I'm like, main plot, I don't need it. But I'm so excited for the next book in this series. I love them. My plan for when they're all out is to buy the whole set, because I have, the ones that I do own are on ebook. And I want like the whole nice set of hardcovers. That's what I want in my life. So yeah, absolutely love this. I don't remember who did the audiobook. I should probably look that up. Hold on. So this was narrated by Jesse Valinsky, who did a marvelous job. And yeah, love this series. We're entering the top 3, and number 3 is another one that came out in 2023. This is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This was my first read of the year, and it was 5 stars, and I was just like, wow, 5 stars right from the get-go. Excellent. This is a kind of alternate history fantasy where fairies are real and they are being studied by scholars at Cambridge and Oxford. We follow Emily Wilde, who is a professor at Cambridge and is looking into these, I believe it's Icelandic folk. So she is doing field work, and it is set up as her field journal. And she has her kind of academic rival, but like also sort of a friend, Wendell Bambleby Is that what it is? I can't quite remember. I just read the sequel too. You'd think I'd remember. And he kind of crashes her expedition. It's so good. I love fae, and I love dark fae, and these fae are dark, but also like some of them are really adorable. There's one named Poe, who I love so much. But like the kind of the high courtly fae in this are so creepy. My word. And the romance between Emily and Wendell, because of course there's a romance between them. It's very reminiscent of Howl and Sophie from Howl's Moving Castle, which is just an absolute A+. And I'll give you a little spoiler, kind of. I read the sequel, which came out this month, January 2024. I had an arc of it, had an arc for the first one too. And it was just as good and absolutely marvelous. Can't wait for the third book. Oh, love it. Yeah, definitely like another top tier series for me. Changing gears for book number 2, and this very nearly made it as number 1. And I'm actually like kind of not entirely sure of the order still in some ways. However, I'll briefly talk about that when we get to number 1. But number 2 is Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. This is translated from the Japanese by Philip Gabriel. This has been on my shelf for quite a while. I asked for it for Christmas or birthday a few years ago and just haven't gotten to it. But like, it's cat, so you know, I love cats. I love animals. However, I know that with an animal story, it's gonna be sad. So I think that's kind of why I put it off as long as I did, because I was like, I know I'm gonna cry during this. I did, first of all, I did cry. Not for the reason I expected. And that's all I'll say about it here. I do think that in the month that I wrapped it up, I said a little more explicitly. Was it July? I think it was July. I could be completely lying about that. But if you want to know a little bit more, you can go watch that video. Arikawa gets into the head of a cat so well. Like, I'm convinced, yeah, this is how my cats sound. This follows a cat, Nana, who is rescued by Satoru, and they live a very happy life together. And then all of a sudden, Satoru is looking for somebody to take Nana for him. And Nana doesn't know why, but Nana knows he wants to stay with Satoru. So he kind of, at every new place they go, he kind of manipulates the situation so that he can stay with Satoru. My heart broke, but it was so beautiful. Such a beautiful book. Like I said, Arikawa gets into the head of cats so well. She also, Nana is not the only cat we meet. We meet several other cats. We also meet a dog. And the way that she writes them also just feels so real to me. Like, yeah, that is how a cat would think. That is how a dog would think. It is a gorgeous book. I highly recommend it to everybody. I made my mom read it, and she loved it too. So yeah, definitely a good one. Just be prepared to cry. And it's very short, so it's a very easy read. I think this is actually, yeah, it's like less than 250 pages. So it's a very quick read. I think I read it in a day or two, but it's an emotional one. So yeah. And now we have made it to number 1, which is technically 2 books because they're a series. So I'm cheating, but you know, it's within my rules. So we have Little Thieves and the sequel, Painted Devils by Margaret Owen. I love these so much. All right, so Little Thieves is a retelling of the fairy tale The Goose Girl, told from the perspective of the fairy tale's villain, who here is Vanya, who is my new favorite character ever. Much like the main character in Thief, Liar, Lady, whose name I have just forgotten. Vanya is very morally gray. She does some bad stuff. Obviously, she's the fairy tale villain. So in the Goose Girl, if you aren't familiar with the fairy tale, I'm gonna put that one down. I'll talk a bit about that one after. So, and if you're not familiar with the Goose Girl, the story is that there is a princess who is being sent off to marry the prince of a neighboring country, and she brings with her on the journey a servant girl. And the servant girl forces the princess to switch places with her and steals her identity. So yeah, we're following this girl who has stolen another person's identity and is stealing things from the rich people. But I love her. I love her so much. I love what Owen does with the fairy tale. Just the way she uses the different aspects of it are so original. There was one thing that I thought was just going to be completely left out, which was surprising to me because it's kind of an important thing in the fairy tale, but then it comes in at the end in this crazy way that was so intense. And I loved it. Loved it. Loved it. So Painted Devils picks up after the events of Little Thieves. And you would think that, like, the story of the Goose Girl is over. You would think that Owen would be done with that and would be maybe incorporating a new fairy tale or just going off script. However, she brings in something else from the original fairy tale that was not in Little Thieves, and it made me so excited. I just love how she has woven the fairy tale into the fabric of her story. I also love the romance between Vanya and Emmerich, which is in both of the books, but is like really a highlight here. I love them together. It's just so good. And I think the reason why these two ended up being on top and not the Traveling Cat Chronicles was because of when I got to Painted Devils and realized that she was still using aspects of the Goose Girl as main plot points that hadn't been brought in before, and I just like went feral kind of and was so excited for it. So that is what ultimately made these two the top for me, was the masterful way Owen uses the original source material. I can't wait for the third book. Oh, it's gonna be so good. So, those are my top 10 reads of 2023. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you read any of them? What did you think? What were your top books for 2023? It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.